this week we are going to still do our conversations as we already do on Sundays, where you are tasked to like design a system, and we question you about the decisions that you make in retrospect to the constraints you have already been given most of the time. So what we are basically going to be doing is just ask questions and find out how you probably attempt at solving a problem with whatever you think is needed, and that's how you're going to go about it. So Frederick, if you want to do an introduction, and I also want to know if you're going to go with any um, online drawing canvas, so that you can also share with us, so that we can see your designs as you are making them, your thought process and everything.
Yeah, so my name is Frederick. I'm more or less like a friend of Philippa. So yeah, she brought me here. So yeah, that's a little about me. I work as a software engineer, not anything big, but yeah, we are managing.
Yeah.
For the drawing, I'm not sure, but I was asking Philippa which software or which platform you guys use, so that I can make use of that.
Did she suggest anything that you can use?
No, I think she missed my message, so she
Yeah,
couldn't reply.
you can use anything you're comfortable with. Sorry, I just saw the messages.
Okay. So which ones do you think I can use better? Excel Draw or
Yeah,
let me
yeah. We
see.
mostly use Escalator. I think last week Duncan used T or Draw, but if you've used Escalator, you can go with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes. Let me
we would
share.
prefer you to share it as a okay, yeah, so that people can join, and if you also share your screen as well, so those who can access the drawing can also view from there as well.
Okay. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, I believe I can.
Okay. I can see some activities. Right. So I think I'm ready when you are ready.
Okay, 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 perfect. So this week you are going to be taxed on building a social investment feed with personalized recommendations for a platform. So a platform is looking for a system that they can feed people with relevant information or personalized information according to what kind of person is using their platform, to get social related investment information as and when they come, pertaining to the type of investment information they need. And as well, if you want me to paste the official, or is it called, the outline, I can paste it in chat for you as well, so that you can easily
Yeah,
reference it
yes,
when you can.
please.
Okay.
Yes, please do that. Let me just copy that. Second. Right. So design a social investing feed with personalized recommendations. Architect a unified feed for a fintech platform that seamlessly interleaves organic social content, public trade executions, market news, and ML-driven personalized recommendations. So social investment, a
You,
unified feed.
all questions are welcomed.
All right. So, can you retake the question in a different manner for me?
What manner are you expecting me to give?
Like maybe say it in a different way. If if I could maybe wrap my head around
Oh
that.
yeah, so I think something like your Twitter for you, this is Twitter for you, your Twitter feed where you get from X, right? But it's quite similar. You
Mhm.
follow people, you follow people who are like popular. You have specific things that you follow. If you're a football, if you're on your like Twitter, football Twitter,
Mhm.
you get the kind of feed that you have. If you're on like a specific part of Twitter, you get the kind of feed that you have. So that's what we are trying to tailor to, right? So you're trying to build a feed for each user
Mhm.
depending on what they are interested in, and it's more centered around investment portfolio because it's a fintech platform and they want that kind of thing for their for their users.
All right. So, if I do understand what you are saying, right, we are more or less building a platform for fintech organizations where users have a specific feed that they, should I say, follow, right?
Yeah.
Then they, like they can make messages on those feed and receive messages. Is that the case?
No, not exactly. We are only just focused on the feed, right? So there's no um other social related features that are like considered. We only just want to see the feed. So we only just want to see that this guy posted this and we are seeing it because we are interested in that particular thing. And all the related stuff that I've mentioned in the question, right?
All right. So meaning like we the users, right,
Yeah.
who should see the feed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Should I care about the one posting the feed?
Yes, so you probably care about who the user is following. If it's like an investor, an influencer, or a financial market itself, financial asset. So if someone is investing in MTN Ghana, right, probably wants to find information about MTN Ghana, but it's literally the same entity that is representing a user on the platform, right? So that's the thing.
All right. So in this case, the organization is actually the one that does the posting of the feed. But then the other case, like those who just come to the platform to follow the feed, just receive the feed from whichever feed they've probably subscribed to or they are interested in.
Yes, exactly. But there are like nuances where you can have another person who is joining a platform who can post certain related information because they are um like a high respected investor or an influencer in some sense on the platform.
Okay. Okay. So organization users and post feed. Right. Okay. Um. Right. So we have users seeing feeds, organizations and users who are very important to a specific feed can also post feed. Right. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And lastly, since it's supposed to be personalized, we want to be having like dynamic feed as income. So if there is something hot news that's popping up, we want to be able to see it. And if there's
Okay.
anything related to any of the things that we are following, we should be able to see them. So
Okay. So more or less like anytime a feed is posted and probably really important, it may not be what you are following, but it's important. We can notify you of such feed or like make you receive such feed, as well as if there is any feed that is related to the things you are already following, the feeds you are already following, right? You get notifications on that.
yes, recommendations in a sense, yes.
Okay, recommendations. Okay. All right. So, is that all that we need for such a system? Do you want me to add any other thing aside the functional requirements I just stated? Okay. All right. So I'm assuming in this kind of system, right? We are talking about users being able to see feed, right?
Yeah.
So for such a system, I'm assuming the system should be available to all of the users so that they can always, every time when they come to the platform, they should be able to see feed a feed that was made, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. And then aside that, I'm assuming for a feed that is posted, right? Since it's a very important thing and users can actually base on that for financial investment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming the users can actually base on this feed informations for some financial investments and stuff. Since we are talking about tech here, so if it is important, then we want to make sure that they receive the feed in some less than, let's say 200 milliseconds, right? Low latency.
Oh yeah. I think for the financial market, it's usually lower, but because we are offering them information in regard to the tickets they are receiving, 200 should
Mm,
be enough. But ideally, we'll be going for like 100 or less than 100.
okay, all right. So something like, let's say 100. Let's assume it's 100.
Yeah.
Right. So in this case, okay, all right. And there is a possibility that when you just talked about hot feeds, right? So I'm assuming
Yes.
there is a possibility that a feed just came in. A lot of people need to actually receive such a kind of feed because it's really important. I am assuming I have an example. I don't know if it works. Like the case where Elon Musk makes a post relating to, let's say, something important in a financial space, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people need to receive such kind of message because it would determine maybe the investment they need to make, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
okay, so meaning I probably need to handle the scalability of the system to handle such scalability for hot feeds. Okay, so I want to actually be able to handle that so that those users receive that as quick as possible. And aside scalability for the system, um, yeah, we talked about availability. Um, and then we are accepting some latency of 100 milliseconds. I think these are the functional requirements that I have of head that I think such a system should have. You can maybe correct me if I need to add something more.
I think is your recommendation part still under the scalability part for hot feeds, right?
Yeah, so okay, maybe so for hot and maybe recommend hot and recommendation. I think I missed that fits. Yeah, so basically I need to handle, especially for recommendation feeds, where a feed comes in and I probably need to send it to all the users who are related to that feed, right? They may be quite a lot, right, in the system.
Yeah.
Um, I want to quickly ask, how many users are we expecting in this kind of system?
Oh, I think there are a lot of people who are like interested in investments, so we can assume a large user base of like 100,000 to 500,000 active
Okay,
users.
so about 100,000 active users. All right, and for feeds that are made, how many feeds do I expect to receive maybe within a day?
this dynamic, you usually have like a very small percentage always contributing to rights. So I should say like 1,000 people for 100,000, you only have 1,000 people who are actually posting or actively engaging
Uh,
communities and posting relevant information.
okay. And I'm assuming this is probably could be per day, right?
Oh,
The
this
appropriate.
I'm saying this in respect to like the users who are posting per, not exactly per the post. So if you're
Oh,
looking for a post, maybe you could do, okay, 1,000 is still relevant. Yes, yeah, 1,000 is still relevant.
okay. Yeah, it could be less than that, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Because
less
since
or
we
more.
have like probably, yeah, less or more, so probably something like less than thousand, less or equal to thousand posts, right? All right. So let me take a look at my entities that will be in such a system. So in this case, we are talking about users, right? The users here are the ones who actually subscribe to these feeds and get recommendations, um, recommended feeds, right? And then we would have maybe the feed itself. Um, so yeah, the feed is there, and for a feed, I think we made an assumption that the organizations could actually also be users, right? So is that valid?
Yes, yes.
Or all right, so it's assumed that users can have some privileges, right? So maybe a user can own a feed, and a user can be a part of a feed or following other users who own some feeds, right? So I'm just assuming. So aside that, what else do we need? Yeah, I think these two entities should be good for what we are building right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now let me go on to look at probably the API endpoints that we need for, or the interfaces that we need for such a system. All right, so for such a system like this, we are going to be posting feed, right? So probably I can have a REST endpoint to, let's say, uh, feed, which is going to be a post endpoint, and it will take the feed information and probably return us the feed that we posted, right? Um, the other cases, we probably need a get endpoint to um, initially fetch our feeds. So something like feeds, and this will return like a list of like the feeds and that we a user um, should have, right? So I think from what I see, I think users should also have something like a timeline so that we know which feeds that the users would be having, right? We know which feeds that they they've received in their timeline. That makes it easier for us to know which of the recommended feeds came to the users or even hot feeds that came to the users timeline. So let me add that to the entities I created.
Um,
So we'll have timelines
quick,
for.
quick question. And how is that going to be different from the feed itself or the or
All
feeds
right, so
endpoint?
the feed. Okay, let me see. The feed is more or less like uh I'm assuming it's more or less like a group that would have like messages, right? Like the information right? But the timeline will hold like any feed message that came to the specific user, right? So because we can have a lot of feeds in the system, we want to make sure we tailor the feeds towards each user, right?
So
So for each user, any feed item that comes, we add it to their timeline. Yeah, but I may be wrong. You can
wait, so
help me.
you're classifying feed as
Yes.
Okay.
So a feed is
A
more or
group.
less like a,
Yeah.
yes, where it's a group, and then you can have feed items. Yes.
I understand.
So the feed items are the ones that hold the,
I
yeah,
understand you from
the
your point.
message. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I think in this case, instead of returning feeds, I should return the feed items for the from the timeline. Yeah. All right. So I think this two API endpoints probably are enough for such a system, since we are not doing other things. We are just focused on posting and then fetching the feeds, right? Or the feed items.
Can we
Okay.
can we
Correct.
check back to your functional and non-functional requirements?
All right. So checking back there, we have, you should see feed and organization here. We said they are actually users with privileges. Um, they can post feed, and users can receive hot feeds and related feeds. So I'm assuming for the last two points, the get feed should be enough to fetch both our recommended feeds and our hot feeds.
Okay. 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 Another point to notice, I think our recommendations are based on ML driven personalized recommendations per the question stated, I believe. So if you want to keep
Mm,
that in mind as well to inform your decisions when
okay,
you're making them.
okay, all right, sure. All right, so let me start with the high level design of this system, right? So first of all, I have a client which I'm talking about the user here, right? So the user's computer or something. Then I have the server that will be receiving the post and then giving me the list of feed items that I need, right? And I also have like the database. So more or less, this is the database, right? So in this situation, the flow goes this way. The client makes a request. It's either the client creates a post request, and then they receive like a response that their post has gone through. And then also the client can receive um um things like feeds, right? So they are feed items on their timeline, right? Um for the database side, it's very clear. You make post which is going to be saving that, and then when you are getting your feed items, you make queries to the database, and the server makes that on your behalf, and it's returned to the client side. Right. So this is more or less like the high level design. And yeah, we also talked about some MLs deciding which feeds go to which client, right? So since we I talked about timelines, we can have like maybe an ML sitting somewhere, machine learning stuff sitting somewhere here. And then our server actually makes some request to this with the feed that was posted, and then this ML will decide which users should probably receive such kind of feeds, based on maybe some based on the recommend. So it recommends which users should receive their feed, and the server actually posts it on their timeline, right? And um yeah, I think for hot feeds too, yeah, the ML handles things like that. Let me quickly check my the question again. Architecture mechanism. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm on the right path, but correct me if something is not going right. Are we good?
I don't think we have right or wrong answers. We are just trying to examine your design as and when and how it
Okay.
solves the issue. So we don't have to worry about that right now.
All right. Okay. Sure. Yeah, so at this point, I believe this should serve like the application if we are not considering like the non-functional requirements at the point at the at right now, like if you are not considering the non-functional requirements, then this is fine. But then considering the non-functional requirements, let's go deep to it and see which parts we probably need to update so that we can handle whatever load, whatever latency that we have defined for such a system, right? So deep dive, right? So first of all, the first non-functional requirements we talked about is we said that the feed items should be available for our users to be able to view, right? Like anytime they come to the system, right, they should receive their feed items, right? So I'm going to um okay, so they should receive their feed item. So what I'm thinking of that would work, right, is that for every client, just as I said, since we have a timeline for every client, let's keep the timeline close to the client, right, so that at every point in time, like they can always get um um data from their timeline. So I'm just going to introduce maybe something like a cache um somewhere here. Is that how we spell cache? Yeah. Right. So I introduce a cache somewhere here, and then I also have my server somewhere here, and I have my database here, and then my ML here. Okay. So in this case, the flow is anytime I want to fetch my timeline, I fetch it directly from the cache, right? And for post request, I just send it to the server, right? And the server will be responsible for updating the cache, as well as updating the database. So I'm assuming the user's timeline could be on the database, right? But then at every point in time, when we update the database, the timeline on the database, we should go ahead to also update the cache to hold that timeline information, right? The timeline that has like the user, the feed items. Then yeah, we also have the ML here, right? So in this case, what happens is like the load that will be placed on the server will be reduced, and the load that will be placed on the database will also be reduced. Because imagine we scale the server, right? We haven't scaled the database enough, right, to handle such a kind of read, right? So we may have to scale the database. But then the best way to I think we can go with is probably put a cache that is close to the user.
Okay, before you continue from here, can you explain to me what you mean by scaling a server or scaling a database?
All right, so um what I mean is for this database, right? We have a timeline of we have timelines for our users. Assuming like maybe we have like one of this database just living somewhere, right? Every user makes a request to this database. Like if we have like 100,000 users, they all make a request, assuming we had a hot let's say a hot feed, right? And everyone is trying to view their timeline. That will be a lot of query on the database that can break the database. So maybe another way to improve the database to handle that is probably have something like let's say read databases, which are just responsible for allowing the user to read their timelines, right? And then we probably have one for writing data to writing data, right? So that case we've scaled by increasing the read databases, but then still the based on the latency that we are looking for, right? We still need something that can improve that latency, and that is where I bring in the cache.
Okay.
The cache is faster when it's loading data, right? So and the cache can be placed near us. So I think CDNs are caches, right? So yeah, I'm assuming this cache can even be a CDN. So sitting next to wherever the user is, and they can easily load their data from such kind of CDNs.
Okay. Okay. Is that, I think you mentioned an approach where you scale your database and probably your server. Is that the only approach that you believe would help cater for the load in a sense?
So okay, let me look at the forgot and recommendation phase. Yeah, so for the load, right? I think for the load, what I may rather want us to do is that since we are doing things like trying to update users timeline, more or less we will call it fanning out like messages, right? um Posting messages, as we said, like we don't have a lot of people who will be doing that lots of posts, but then we'll have a lot of rates on timelines, right? So in this case, I'll assume the server can handle the posting, but then for things like handling timeline information, updating timeline, I could introduce something like a queue, right? Where anytime a post is created, right, we also end up putting that post in the queue, right? And in this queue, basically the queue will have some more or less like some servers there that are mainly responsible for running whatever is in the queue and using it to update the timeline. So more or less, whatever information comes in the queue. Um, okay, I think I'll rather go with like the information coming from the ML, since the ML will decide which user should receive the. Maybe you can let me know if I'm going the wrong direction, but I'm assuming that um after the ML has done its job and knows who to put that feed item on their timeline, it's placed on the queue, right? And the queue does the work of like finding all the users. We're assuming that could also be something like a cache somewhere near the queue where we keep track of all the users in the system. User cache. And the queue then simply gets the users that needs to receive that specific feed item, right? I mean the servers, I mean these servers here. um Let me call them workers. So they are responsible for picking items in a queue and then getting the related users that need to receive this particular message, and then they also go on to update the timeline of the user. So these workers will communicate with this database here by updating the timeline of the user, as well as also updating this cache here as well. Yeah, my diagram is looking messy, but yeah, this is the approach I will actually take if I'm looking at scaling the system to handle a lot of load. Because in this case, when an item is placed in a queue, we are supposed to make sure that it is processed before. it is taking up the queue. So more or less, we have some should I say fault tolerance? Yeah, if it fails to go to the right people, we can just redo it. Yeah, we can just redo it. Re put it on the timelines of like our users.
Okay.
And there was a question that I may have forgotten to ask, but if there are duplicate feed items on one person's feed, I think it shouldn't be an issue, right?
In what sense? So I saw a post from Elon Musk talking about something,
And then
and
you see it
I see
again.
it again.
Exactly.
I don't believe that would be an issue, depending if they are like
Yeah.
occurring at different times as well.
Yeah. So yes, even if these workers fail to, maybe it went through, but then there was no acknowledgement, we can still do update the timeline again. Like, yeah. And then when we are done, we just take the whatever is on the queue, we take it out. Um, I think for the non-functional requirements, 100 milliseconds of late. Yeah, so there is also the part which I've not talked about, which is the for the hot feeds, right? Um, so the hot feeds, one thing that we could bring in here because it's a hot feed and we may and even a recommended feed and we may want our users to receive them on time, right? We can go with things like um, making our system like also handle things like notifications, like push notifications to the clients, right?
I don't believe that
um
is.
I don't know if I could
I don't believe that is the
come again.
intention of um what we meant by hot feed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if you care for me to explain, a hot feed could basically be something
Yes.
that is popular on the timeline. So people are following other people.
uh
Someone posts something that is
mm,
very interesting. Everyone seems to be interacting with that particular post, and that needs to be recommended to our system. So how do you do such cases? It's definitely, I think, the axe for that particular requirement.
okay, so I think for hot feeds, right, what I'm thinking of is because timeline writing to users timeline can actually be a lot of work, right? Imagine one post and there are 10,000 users to receive just one post, right? So for a hot feed, maybe even 10 billion users can actually receive that hot feed message. So the approach I may go with is instead of like trying to write to the timeline of the users for a hot feed, I'm actually going to put hot feeds in their own like database. So they are not actually going to be processed by the queue, but they are sitting somewhere, maybe in a cache somewhere, right? And basically, when the ML decides that this is a hot feed, it's probably going to be putting that in here, and probably some database updates go on, right? And when the user is going to load their timeline, they are actually going to load their timeline along with the hotfix cache, right? So the client will do the merging of like the data, right, from both sides, from the timeline and then from the hotfix cache. So I think this way we don't end up doing a lot of writes. Imagine like 10 hot feeds coming and then there are about 10 billion people who are supposed to receive that in 100 milliseconds. That is actually not feasible.
Okay, 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 okay. So, in overall, can you summarize how your given components help solve the non-functional requirements that we have for the system? And after that, I think I have a small
Okay.
question to ask.
All right, let me go through the non-functional requirements again. So we said one is should be available to view feed items. So no matter what, when the user loads their feed, they should receive it. It should never fail. And then we are also saying that feed should be received in less than 100 milliseconds. That is low latency. And we should also handle skills for recommendation feeds as well as hot feeds, right? So um looking at my deep dive system, right? The first thing when it comes to availability, we are saying that we are handling that with a cache that holds the timelines of users, and this holds like the feed items that the users would need to see, right? And then there's also a cache sheet. Okay, let me just go through this flow first before coming to that. Um, right. So the first one is the availability, which I did say that the cache will handle that for us. So in a way, we are going to end up with a lower latency, probably less than 100 milliseconds, because we are not directly reading from the database. Database queries can be expensive, right? And therefore, if we have it in a cache closer to our users, it will be way faster, right? So this cache is more or less assumed to be something that is geographically located at points where our users will need them, right? And then the next part is the milliseconds latency, 100 milliseconds. And this is really important when it comes to the case of hot feeds, right? And I did explain that for hot feeds, instead of writing them to the timeline of our users, which could take really long to do, let's rather have a cache here, which is the one here, right? Hot feed. This is a hot feed cache, right? And this will be responsible for holding feeds that may actually need to be fanned out to a lot of users, right? So we can actually decide maybe how many users should how which feed should actually be a hot feed or whatever. That will actually be decided by the ML system, right? And when that is decided, it's placed here, right? So in that case, we are still solving the milliseconds issue, right? We are loading from here, which is fast, and we are also loading hot feeds from here, which is also fast. So in a way, our users receive that in probably less than 100 milliseconds. Scalability for hot feeds, I think this flow also works for the scalability for hot feeds. Instead of putting them in a queue that will end up like running for minutes, even let's say hours, and failing because of like the load, right? We rather put it here and do some just quick writes to the database, which is um way easier because writes to the database are less because the number of people writing to the database are less in that case, right? So um yeah, scalability is good. I think maybe one thing I talked about, which I've not placed on the diagram, is scaling the database, um, the scaling of the database, right? We can do something like assuming maybe we have like our users who are doing the posting of the feed to be located in so many different areas. We can actually scale the database. I don't know how to put it, but we can have a database. Okay, let's see. We can have a database close to them by geographical region so that when they make their post, it's faster to like send that post to that database.
I get
But
you.
I don't know if that's
I get you.
that is fine here. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is all from my side.
Right, right. I had a little question about the ML side, right? Are we assuming that
Hmm.
that is not part of the design since and because I have a question related to it.
Oh, yeah, it's actually part. I actually forgot to.
Okay,
So I think the ML side is really important to scale it. Yeah.
before you even
And
go there, I have a question. So the question is asking, um, your users are reporting a lot of issues relating to their feed, right? And they are saying most of the time it's not very consistent to what they are trying to see all the time, and it's especially very slow in the mornings. How do you think that report is contributing to your system, and how do you think it can resolve that particular issue.
Can you take the second? You said something slow.
Yeah,
I think
so
I missed that.
it's quite slow in the mornings, right? And people are saying it's very inconsistent to what they want to see. Um, which part of your
The
system?
ML,
Yeah, I'm not.
did you say the ML is slow?
No, their feed is slow. Their timeline is slow, especially in the
Oh
morning
yes.
because it takes a long time for it to load and stuff, right? And
Okay.
the question is, which part of your system do you think is being bottlenecked by this, and where do you think you can do to solve the particular problem if you find the points that are weak?
All right. So I think the first thing probably is mostly in the mornings. I'm assuming the users uh, timeline cache has not yet been updated. So when they make a load, it will hit the server, right? And now the server has to query the database before updating the users um, cache, right? So instead of waiting for that to happen, right, we could actually have some kind of jobs running in the background that do that even before the morning starts. We can assume maybe early morning around 7, a lot of people go to view their feeds, and because the cache becomes empty at that point in time, there will be a lot of load on the server to update the timelines, or like yeah, move the timeline information to the cache, right? So running a background workload that will put the timeline in the cache before that time, the 7 o'clock comes, will be like one of the best ways to solve this issue, right? So that we won't have the a load on the system um around that time. I don't know if it makes sense. Yeah.
As you stated, is one of the solutions. So
Yeah, one. Yeah. Also, I think is there any other question? I think you made mention of some other question. I don't know if I missed.
I said their timelines are inconsistent, right? And where do you think there's a bottleneck and how we can resolve that?
Inconsistent. When you say inconsistent, like what do you mean?
So
The
imagine
timelines are.
I'm going to skip out of the financial domain for a second here and try and fit it to
Mm-hmm,
match like a Twitter, right? So I'm a Barcelona fan. After a match, we've lost the
mm-hmm,
match. My timeline is usually supposed to explode for for all reasons relating to the match that we lost, the rants, the people insulting other players, all sorts of things
mm-hmm,
that are related to the match, right? But I don't see it right now. I'm seeing things about Taylor Swift and
mm.
some random artist doing something that I'm really not interested in. Where do you think the bottleneck
Oh,
is coming from, and how do you think you can solve that particular solution for them? They have a solution for them.
mhm. Yeah. So I think the obvious thing I see is probably the cache are still right. They are giving data that is probably not um late. Should I say latest, right? Which is what you want, right? So I'm thinking like uh, I'm actually thinking instead of Abi, you did say you are following Barcelona, right?
Yeah.
So probably you are following their feed. So instead of like just loading the timeline from just the cache and maybe hot feed, let's also make a request to load recommended feeds. And that way, if the recommended feed probably is not in the cache and not in the hot feed cache, the client can actually merge the one from the server, and that will give us like one of the latest data that we need,
I believe
right?
you mentioned the recommendation is also part of this of the cache, the fresh cache, right? Where the server interacts with the
Yeah,
ML part.
yeah. So maybe uh,
If you don't have a solution for it,
yeah,
we can skip. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think this is the only solution I'm actually thinking of. Yeah, loading from the server, loading from the server, for recommended feeds, right? And maybe merging them together to remove duplicates. I think that's what I actually have in mind right now.
Okay, okay. That was a wonderful. I believe we don't have anything to add, right? Okay, not at all. Yeah, yeah. We are almost down to time. I believe you don't really have anything else to say unless you want to dispute something else right now. I'll open the floor for questions, reviews, what have you. Fantastic job on the design.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys, we are open for questions and reviews.
I don't know if okay, I think I have a question, but it's related to how you were